is Amy with Flower Moxie, and we're going to be building a bouquet today using some chicken wire and creating an egg. So obviously I did this in advance, and when I make my chicken wire egg, I try to be as clean as I can. What you don't want to do is just have like a wad of it. You're trying to create a tube that the stems can go in so they're well supported like this. And it's my new favorite way to design bouquets. So one thing that's a little bit tricky is getting started. Once you get started, then I feel like it's easier than hand building. But initially it's like you're holding on to the egg and we're driving this in and creating our shape initially with greenery. And it's like I'm kind of holding the egg and the stem at the same time, so you can see the weirdness here. But as you get going, it does become easier. And the whole reason why I like using this egg and building bouquets is several reasons. So if I'm building something that has very weighty things like a big king protea, or like pampas grass, something that like has a lot of bulk, I need some structure to keep that bouquet in the shape that I want it to be in. So naturally when you're holding something in your hand and you don't have this structure kind of spacing those stems apart, it just starts falling in on itself. And that's frustrating when you want something to be a little bit more organic or airy. And that's what I try to go for in my bouquets. So I don't like them to be extremely compact. I mean, I'll build it if that's the way my bride likes it. But I like to create some movement, and I like breathing room between my blooms. And so that's always the challenge that I had as a florist, is I just feel like the more product I add, it just starts coming in on itself and it just looks kind of like a mass of flowers at the end. So I always start this with greenery, and you can make it as wild and organic as you want. If you don't like it this organic, just pull it in a little bit tighter. One thing that's nice, so I do build this more one-sided, but I can take things like towards the camera. So it's not going to be just like a fan. We want it like spilling out as well. Okay, so I have a good place to start. And as you can see, like it's a lot easier to hold on to because I have several stems to hold on to, and I don't have to support like the little chicken wire cage anymore. So now I'm gonna start with my blooms. And basically I just want a greenery foundation to kind of support everything else. And I can come back in with my flowers. And I have some Escimo Roses. And sometimes you kind of have to spin it to get it down. And I'm going to create a little bit of like a U shape with my bouquet. So I'm gonna have some lower pieces, and on the outside will be higher pieces. So I'm kind of just getting in my anchor. So I have some White Carnations, Escimo Roses that have blown out wonderfully. This is a good opportunity to tell you Eskimos always come in really, really small. And they will look super disappointing at first, but I feel personally they blow out to me just as well as a garden rose most of the time. my personal opinion, which you know I'm gonna give you that, is that I feel like garden roses, for the price, they're a bit overrated, especially if they don't open to full capacity. So I have some delicate things here. I have Ranunculus, Lisianthus, Delphinium. So I'm starting with those hardier things, the things that are a little bit larger and more visually weighty, because I want to establish where those are going. So as you can see, I'm putting things on different planes, and that's going to help me with that organic shape. And I'm checking in the mirror as I go. So I'm not, like I've said in other videos, I'm not stressing about the exact placement right now because I can always adjust it. And I'm gonna go ahead and come in with this linear flower, which is Delphinium. So I might change this, but in a lot of the collections, I don't have Delphinium in bouquets because typically it's so much more linear than this. This is perfect for a bouquet, but a lot of times Delphinium will come in with like double the amount of buds, probably down to where my hand is. And to rip all that off, like I'm very used to doing that as a florist, but I feel like I waste a lot. So oftentimes when it comes to blue elements, I go for Tweedia, but the Tweedia that we got this, it's still like pandemic days if you're watching this later. So we've been a little bit restricted on what we can get, so I had to be a little bit flexible. I've got Thistle and I've already cut this apart, and I'm just dispersing my colors accordingly. But if you get Delphinium, more than likely you'll have to take a lot of the lower buds off because you'll have a huge long piece of flower sticking out, which will be awkward. So I like where this is going. This guy, yeah. And I like this wire because I can come in at angles that would be harder or almost impossible to do if I was hand building. So it's a great way to like build a cascade without having to use a foam holder, which I try to avoid when possible. So driving in more thistle, and I want it on like a different plane. And sometimes towards the end, you begin to run out of like real estate with your chicken wire. That's why it's really important to have clean stems. And I didn't say this at the beginning, but you don't want to drive leaves down into the center of this chicken wire. You want to keep it really clean, because like 15 stems in, you'll be hating yourself for doing that. You'll run out of room. In carnations, I use those, like, obviously they're more of a filler flower, so I'm just kind of tucking them in, and then I'll let like the fancier flowers sprig out a little bit more. So just because I greened it out doesn't mean I'm completely done with greenery. I will come back in and add pieces as I go. So I feel like I can get into my more delicate items now. So here's our Lisianthus. And Lisianthus is also a flower that I often cut apart because on one main stem, you'll probably get several blooms. I try to cut off like little notches that will get caught if I'm trying to adjust my flower, which I do often. And it's just finding the right hole to stick it in. It's awkward. So again, I'm bringing this forward so it will face outward, like towards the camera. And my hand is very relaxed, and I'm just kind of supporting little bird's nest I've got going on. It kind of, the one thing that's negative about this whole chicken wire technique is you're not going to have pretty stems. Like, it's gonna look like a hot mess. It kind of reminds me of that game, Kerplunk, Like back in the day when it's like all these little straws going a bunch of weird directions, that's what it's like. But I cut my stem short, so you're not gonna see it in any of the pictures. I'll show you how to tie it off at the end, of course. So some people get mad on my videos. They're like, you didn't build it in a spiral. I'm like, well, there's plenty of ways to build things. So my hands kind of in a weird position. I need to adjust them slightly, and the good thing is we're not gonna lose our formation completely. Things will shift around, but they can easily be adjusted. So we don't stress out as we're building, especially when you're a new florist or DIY. When I was new, like if I would start building something and it wasn't looking the way I wanted it to look, I would get really frustrated and just put it down and take it apart and start over. And not only does that kind of psych you out, it also is kind of hard on your product when you're pulling it in, and it's just really not necessary. Really, probably you can just tweak a few things, adjust some placements. So that's what I always tell like my new designers is like, don't get frustrated, just keep working with it, maybe adjust some things, figure out what's not working. And that way you don't blow your confidence right out of the gate. And the great thing about this chicken wire is it's completely reusable. So you can forage and practice. See, I've got some really curvy ranunculus. These guys are really sweet. A lot of times ranunculus, they come really curved. These are extra curvy. You can wire them, and we have a video on that. So if you know that you're not gonna enjoy the curves, then you need to get some floral straight wire, which I don't think we have it on our website now, but we will. That way you can drive wire up the center of the stem and take that curve out. So I'm gonna check in the mirror where this is at. I like this side, but I feel like this needs a little bit of adjusting. I like kind of how it's lower, and I like the shape of it. I feel like I'm lacking a little bit of greenery here, but best thing is just to observe it as you're building, try to correct those things, and at the end, go stand in front of a mirror with it, because your perspective is so different when you see a photo of it, or when you when you look in the mirror. It looks like a different bouquet. Okay, so I'm at a good stopping point. I like this shape. It's very easy to just sit and adjust it. So let's figure out, what do we do with this craziness at the bottom? So one thing I always do is I cut my stem short anyways. Like, I don't want it to touch her dress or her, and I want her to be able to move the bouquet around to get those really pretty shots. And you can't do that when you have really long stems. So I go through and I cut the stem short, and it still looks crazy. And we knew this going into it, but you can't tape it or like slap a zip tie on it. So what you do is you get a rubber band and you find a sturdy stem, so like a rose, and you wrap it around. Oh, I lost that guy. Okay, we're wrapping this around. If I can get my fat hand out of the way. It's like I've never worked with my hands before. And we're hooking it on that same sturdy stem. So it will hold things in place, and then while still allowing you to adjust it. And then you can wrap ribbon around this and hide that mechanics. So, you know, a lot of times in our styled shoots and our pictures, she can turn it this way, she can hold it down. And bouquets look really nice when you like tip it a little bit towards the front and towards the photographer. So those short stems are helpful for that reason. Okay, so I will list the material that we used and the flowers below in the description. If you have any questions, let me know, and thank you so much.